Well, it's a briefing with the Chief Minister, and it's been a bit of time since we've had a catch-up. You've been to China, all sorts of things going on. You're not happy about planning. But let's go to China first of all, shall we? I mean, there was obviously the usual thing about why you went, but in fact, we were hearing a lot of interesting comments, especially for people standing even for the by-elections, that this was a good idea. They actually were supporting you. But we haven't seen anything. I mean, we have no pictures, no video, nothing like that. But can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very, very positive meeting. We've had, obviously, our first trip was 12 months ago. We covered, in many ways, the same sort of ground as we did 12 months ago. The one thing about Chinese relationships is it does take a long time to develop, and we noticed quite a distinct improvement and warmth, in fact, of the welcome we had this time in comparison to 12 months ago. It was a very intense week or so we were there. We visited 4 different cities: Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai and Wuxi. Very positive results at every one. We've signed a new MOU with the insurance regulator, which means we now have MOUs with all the financial services regulators, banking, the other financial services and insurance, which now gives a green light for Allan Financial Services to sell into China. And we've built new trade relationships with Shanghai and with Tianjin, so things are going very well.
Yeah, you're just one of all these other places that are going out there doing exactly the same thing. I interviewed Steve McGowan from the perspective of the private sector. He was very positive, and he was mentioning that having the Chief Minister, whoever that may be, it does open the doors. But how do you open more doors than anybody else? Can you?
Well, you can't really. I mean, the Chief Minister, and this isn't an Alan Bell thing, this is the status, the Chief Minister can open doors where ordinary business can't access, or indeed ordinary ministers can't access. They are very hierarchical, as I've said before, in China, and they will only meet people of equivalent status as they see it. And I already made the point that one meeting we had was cancelled because the chief executive, who was the highest ranking officer at the time, was called away to something else and couldn't find someone of equivalent status to take over. The meeting was cancelled. We have to understand the Chinese culture on that, but the chief minister can open political doors that very few other people can, and that's why it's so important that the chief minister leads these trade visits to help the business community develop.
Will we ever see results in the sense of like a bank or a building or some sort of structure here on the Isle of Man that has come directly from this?
Business has already come from China from last year, and the people we spoke to this time, a good number of them have already opened Manx companies or are in the process of opening Manx companies. It is a slow burn. You're not going to get a bank overnight. You wouldn't get any bank overnight. But we've laid the foundations now. We're building the relationships. The business community obviously have their own contacts. By government endorsing those contacts, it gives a greater status to the Isle of Man, and it shows our long-term commitment to China. And I think over the next few years, we will start to see some real engagement with Chinese business.
And I suppose going back to my earlier question about why the Isle of Man, is there anything that gives us a unique selling point on this?
Well, our main one really is this is the one area we absolutely have a unique position on. The fact that we're not part of the United Kingdom, we're not part of the European Union, but we are part of the European Union VAT network.
Which Jersey Guernsey is not.
Our competitors are not. We are the only offshore jurisdiction with a zero corporate tax rate with access to the European Union VAT network. And for Chinese exporters, that's really important. And that's the area we've been emphasising and has got a lot of traction on, especially bearing in mind, in cooperation with the Isle of Man, Peel Holdings, which is an Isle of Man company, is developing a new container port in Liverpool, billions of pounds going in to that, specifically targeting Chinese exports into Europe. So we can help to underpin what is actually happening in the adjacent island as well. So we have a unique proposition for China which no one else can offer.
Okay, you then will continue this, be it you or whoever takes over. But I mean, what sort of timetable do you have? Once a year, twice a year? Have you got a plan for this?
As far as the business community goes, of course, they go out on a regular basis, and many of the people who travelled with us have been 4, 5, 6 times in the last year already. That will continue. I think logistically it's hard for the Allan government to go out several times a year, but certainly I think we need to be there at least once a year to keep those contacts warm, to prove the sincerity of our initial engagement. It's a hard slog, I can tell you. They're the hardest promotional trips I've ever been on, but they are well worthwhile at the end. And if we are sincere, we genuinely want to engage with what will undoubtedly be the largest economy in the world before too long, we have to have these regular visits.
And does that give them access to you directly? If is that the sort of thing that you can do as well? I would say to you, but I mean to the government, if they have something they want to do, because
we need to be aware when we go on these sales trips that there has to be something in this arrangement for both parties. Now, we obviously want to get Chinese business coming from China, creating jobs, creating investment into the Isle of Man, and we're well on our way with that. But it's interesting, we've now got MOUs with the Tianjin Free Trade Zone, for example, which coincidentally actually happened to open officially on the day we were there. We are also very close now to getting a similar agreement with the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. Two hugely, potentially attractive investments for the Isle of Man. Now, although China is a very successful economy, it is still on a learning curve on developing regulation, for example, for financial services, on knowing how to engage with the international community on regulation, on how to develop a successful economy. They're starting from scratch in these areas. We've had 30 years of developing a diverse, successful economy, one of the most successful in the world in many ways in terms of overall performance. Our experience over those 30 years, together with our experience of regulation, can actually help the Chinese develop at their end. And they feel they're getting something out of it. So it makes the Isle of Man a more attractive proposition to the Chinese government in particular by having a two-way movement of opportunities.
And these people are going out there 4 or 5 times a year. Mm-hmm. This is, what sort of sectors are we talking about? Is it all finance?
It's the people we took with us this time are mainly lawyers, accountants, CSPs, people with a broad experience across the economy. We've kept it tight because most of those organizations already have relations in China, so we're building on existing structures. But in due course, I would hope we would be able to expand it out. As more and more Manx companies engage with China, we will be able to assist them to develop their opportunities at the same time. So it has to be a long-term strategy. It has to be broadening over the years. But if we get it right, the Isle of Man, and I've said this many times before, the Isle of Man doesn't need to conquer China. We only need 1 or 2 small areas of opportunity for a small economy like the Isle of Man to blossom and gain great benefit from. And if we can focus on the sort of areas we're looking at the moment, which have huge potential, Tianjin, a city probably most people haven't heard of, has a population 3 times the size of London and a GDP close to it. We can do extremely well for the future. We have limited resources. We have to target those resources to the areas where we get the best return, and that's what we're trying to do at the moment.
Well, it's the crumbs you always talk about off the table.
Yeah.
But I mean, this thing with the Protocol 3, isn't it, with Europe, isn't it, that sort of thing? Do you think the UK government again would look at this one and then somewhere along the line go, oh, we don't want you doing this anymore?
No, we're solid on that. Our relationship with Europe is through Protocol 3. It's been there for 30, 40 years, which gives us free trade access for manufactured and agricultural goods. That will continue. There is no indication at all the UK will anyway interfere with that. But the Premier of China is coming to the UK, I think, next month on a trade mission. Prince William, the Chancellor, and I think Mr. Cameron have fairly recently been in China. They're developing their own trade links. We are hopefully getting in on the coattails of a lot of this.
You'll be popping down to London to see him, really, for a cuppa?
I won't be saying the Premier,
no.
but the Chinese ambassador is due to visit the island again early summer, all being well. And of course, we are opening later on this summer the Confucius Classroom, which will promote the teaching of Chinese culture and Chinese language in Balakameen, which was, I have to say, very well received in China when we told them the progress we were making. So there's a lot happening. You know, it's not just a matter of going to China, coming back with the bank and saying that's it. It's a long-term and very broad-based relationship we're developing with China. There's great opportunities there for our young people to learn about Chinese culture, for them to learn about our culture, and to develop relations in all sorts of different ways. whether we like it or not, China is the future, and we have to recognize that, and we have to adapt ourselves for that.